Orleans.
Right.
And I feel like they did what they had to do, and I got to do it until I was 75 years old. You can't ask for too much more than that.
Well, listen, you got a Thurman Munson Awards. Obviously, being a New York guy, that had to mean something for February 2009. But what I was really intrigued
Well, I played with him, and I saw Thurman when he was a young player and really enjoyed his growth as he turned into an all-star. I get back to the Munson Award every couple of years, and I consider it a privilege. He was the goods, and I was lucky to be around him.
A few people really even realize, but 1999, you appeared as yourself in Everybody Loves Raymond, that had several members of the Miracle Mets.
Oh yeah, man. That's they were really great to us. That was a wonderful thing. That thing is played 3 or 4 times a year ever since then, and
really?
you get a small. It's like an annuity, but it's a royalty on that broadcast, and it's like $100 a year forever, and it's like it's not a whole lot of money, but all of a sudden you pop up and there's somebody saying, "Oh, I saw you on Everybody Loves Raymond," and I've been so fortunate in that way. It's like the things you got to do that you never thought you would be able to do when you were a kid, 18 years old, just hoping you could be good enough to get signed and get a try at playing professional baseball. All the things that happened after that, I didn't have any of that coming, and I feel pretty fortunate with the way things have gone.
Let's go back to the World Series. I know you batted .400, but your only RBI happened to be the game winner in Game 5. How proud of you are of that moment?
Yeah, I'm so proud of those guys, and I just let me hit against a tough sort of 3/4 sidearm right-hander, Eddie Watt, and I was hot in that game. I had a couple of base hits, and I just would go with a hot hand. He had Art Shamsky on the bench, and he could have brought him in, but he let me stay up there, and I came through with a ball down the left field line that I beat out for a double, and it was the go-ahead eventual winning run in the deciding game in the World Series. That's nice stuff, against your hometown team. But I was just a part of, I was just a part of that thing. And I've said this to people, unless you win it all, then everything you do doesn't necessarily matter. But when you win it all, everything that you contribute matters. And that's what I'm proudest of.
Now, Ron, I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask you because, again, I didn't grow up in that time to see that team, but it's one of those teams that's one of the more covered in sports history. And you got to play with, obviously, the aforementioned Seaver and Koosman, but you also had a young fireballer from Alvin, Texas named Nolan Ryan on that team, and you had a tobacco-chewing father of a country singer named Tug McGraw on that team who pitched long relief for you guys. When you see those guys, and we know Ryan played till 93 and McGraw was on that 80 Phillies team that won their first title after almost 100 years of existence. What do you see in Nolan Ryan in 1969 that's different when he gets traded to the Angels before the 1972 season?
Well, I really thought Nolan Ryan was he was probably more effective in a higher strike zone. In the American League with the outside chest protectors back then, they called a higher strike zone. And I think that really helped Nolan Ryan, besides the fact that he was a power pitcher every day of his life in the major leagues. And he played a long, long time. His career was amazing. But I think what really helped him out of the chute was getting over to the American League early on, where he could be more effective up in the zone. He obviously later on showed you that he understood what he was doing and what he was about physically, keeping himself in great shape, taking care of his body, and Nolan made a lot of money in the game. He's still around the game with the Astros today. He and his wife were, prominent, sitting there behind the back screen, watching those World Series games. It's always good to see them because we're not kids anymore, and not everybody that was on that '69 team is with us anymore in this life. And you appreciate the fact that you've been able to hang in there and still live a reasonably productive life. And I got no kicks, and I was proud to be there. Most people don't know that the guy that got the first save for the New York Mets in 1969 was Nolan Ryan. And he only got about 2 or 3 of them in his entire Major League career, which was 20-some years, and that's a long, long time. But, of course, he was primarily and mainly a starting pitcher, but he saved the first game, a 3-inning save for the New York Mets in 1969.
Now, yeah, and it's funny, he kind of formed his own little duo with Frank Tanana when he went over there in '72, the way that Koosman and Seaver had. I mean, unfortunately, we heard about the news recently that Seaver does have dementia, and he's had to retire from public life. That's
horrible. That is a horrible thing, Go ahead. But
I mean, when you're playing right field, and once every 5 days, because you were one of the first teams in that era, being that the 162 game season came out, the year that Maris broke Ruth's record in '61. What was it like to see Tom Seaver, kind of that classic drop and drive pitcher that a lot of pitchers today try to emulate?
Oh man, I'm telling you, Seaver had it all going. There was a beautiful documentary on Tom Seaver that ran on ESPN. There's been much written. Tom Verdugo. What is it?
Tom Verducci.
Tom Verducci.
Verducci. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Brutalizing his name. Great writer, great television guy. I loved his stuff during the World Series, but Verducci wrote a big piece in SI, and I was able to be a part of the documentary, and Tom called me for some, Verducci called me for some quotes on Tom Seaver, and what I tried to tell him was Tom Seaver, from the day he showed up in the major leagues in 1967, was Tom Seaver. There wasn't any break-in period. He came out of the box with the same stuff, the same confidence, the same attitude that carried him to the Hall of Fame and made it one of the easier votes they ever had to put someone in the Hall of Fame.
I'll never forget, as a kid, when I was first getting into baseball, my dad would buy me these books full of baseball history, and one image that was in there that I'll never forget, I believe it was either Seaver's first or second year in either '67 or '8, but I believe he had a no-hitter, and I'm sure you played in that game because you were with the Mets at that time, and he lost it with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, 1969. It was against the Cubs, and Seaver had a perfect game through 9 2/3, and Jimmy Qualls hit a line drive, base hit, clearing away base hit. Seaver had no-hitter stuff often when he went out there. Why he never threw a no-hitter or that perfect game with the Mets, it is a mystery to me, because he went out there with that kind of stuff often.
Yeah, I've often wondered. I would always have a hard time imagining Tom Seaver in anything but a Mets uniform, but I know he played for the Reds, and he also
the Red Sox.
He was on the Red Sox in 1986,
right.
That second World Championship for the Mets, and I was in New York getting to cover it for WCBS. Brought me back and let me work that World Series and playoffs, and it was a great time. And Seaver had injured his knee and didn't pitch in any of that for the Red Sox. That was the tail end of his career. But I'm going to tell you something. I called him when I wrote my book, and I was asking him about the World Series. And when I made my catch, Gil Hodges went out to the mound to talk to Tom Seaver, and in Verducci's story, he talks about all Gil did was he wanted Seaver to go home with the ball. It was first and third. Rather than try to get a double play, he wanted him to get the lead run and keep the shutout going. We had a 1-run lead at that point. When I called Tom and asked him about that play, Seaver had no memory of it. And I said, of the play, of the visit from Hodges, he said, of the game, none of it, none of those things. And it was a jolt to me because I felt like, those memories are treasures to me, and I thought that something could steal in there and take them away, and they're gone forever. It's a horrible thought. It's sad beyond words. It's tragic.
Yeah, we'll end it on this note, Ron. I just feel bad that Tom Seaver was not a one, that he didn't finish his career with the Mets, because it was hard for me to visualize him in a White Sox uniform as well as a Reds uniform, because to me that's 41 belongs there. It just, I can't.
Well, there were some politics involved, but he did come back to the franchise, and his appearances with the Mets and them promoting Tom and that work he did after his career was over. That money helped Tom build that home in Calistoga, and I sure hope the fires are staying away. He built that home in Napa Valley up on a hillside where he grows some of the finest Cabernet grapes and makes some of the best Cabernet wine. It's most of what's going on now is Nancy Seaver running the show.
Right.
She does a great job of it, but the fact that Tom is struggling more with that dementia, that's tragic.
Is there anything that you want to wrap up this conversation with, that you want to talk about, your book or anything?
No, I think we kind of covered it. I just want if people are looking for somebody who tells it like it is, who's got a decent sense of humor, and I love a good story. I tried to fill the book full of good stories, and if there was a grin on it, so be it. But I had a good time with it. You read that book, you'll know what I think about things and what I feel about things, and that's what I tried to put in it. That's what I tried to bring to that party.
Well, do you ever get down to Port St. Lucie, Florida much?
I will be down there in January at the Mets Fantasy Camp.
Oh.
I go every year, so if you want to stick your nose in there, I'll be happy to spend a little time with you.
I will do my best and put it on my calendar to get there, as long as it's not when I have to go to
Last
LA.
2 weekends in January.
Really?
If anybody's thinking about wanting to go to it, it's a great time. It is a great time. We work hard and have fun, and you can't do more than that.
Then you know what, Ron? I'm looking forward to myself and Lewis going up there, God willing, that we can do it. But meanwhile, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program, and I'm looking forward to that photo with you and I and Lewis together out in Port St. Lucie. So, meanwhile,
Perfect.
Ron,
Glad to do it.
Thanks for being on the show,
You guys
Ron.
take care. Enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome. You and I will be in touch, Ron. Thank you very much. Looking forward to meeting you in person. Okay, Ron? Thank you.
Be safe. Take care, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, man. You take care. You guys are great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. You talk about cerebral and honest, and very humble. I think probably the one thing I appreciated the most about what we got from talking to him.
Right.
I thought that was one of the the cooler guests that we've had so far in the early inclinations of this show. So I thought that was pretty neat.
We got plenty more lined up.
Yeah,
you're just a rookie, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
really, kid.
But that was pretty cool to hear from somebody who was actually there in one of the most fabled parts of baseball history. Is pretty interesting. So,
well, like I said, Lewis, you're just a young pop. Really, you are. But you know what? You will probably be heading up to Port St. Lucie to go ahead and spend some time with Ron. I'm looking for those Kodak moments. But, and I've been in touch with Ron for a long time, and he contacted me, and I said, there's got to be a timing for which we're going to do this. And I felt like in my mind there was no better time than after the World Series concluded yesterday to work this out, and thankfully it worked out. But our next guest is a guy that I can tell you right now is the reason I'm sitting in this studio with you. His name is Tony DeMarco. Tony DeMarco is from the Detroit area originally. He trained me in Southern Florida. I used to be with the Hollywood Sun, Tatler, Miami Herald. He's moved on to the Denver Post, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, MSNBC. He's been around. He's a Hall of Fame voter. And you know what? He's my mentor. Now,